Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our attendees today. We're so happy that you are joining us to learn more about Sametime. And our webinar today is Unlocking the Future of Sametime for New Features, Deployment, and Enhanced Meeting Solution. And we're going to be joined today by Trevor Tellickson and Tony Payne. They'll be guiding you through the webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to them in just a moment. I would like to remind you that if you have questions under the GoToWebinar control panel, there's a place that says questions. If you will take that, open that up and click on that, you can put any questions in there. Please do not put questions in the chat. Put questions in the questions area. Appreciate that so much because we'll actually be able to get a report on those questions later on after the webinar is done. So thank you so much. And Trevor, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Dan, and hello, everyone. As Dan mentioned, we're having a webinar today on all things Sametime, focusing on the meeting server, new features we released, and new features to come. So as Dan mentioned, my name is Trevor Tellickson, the product manager, and with me is Tony Payne, our senior architect with Sametime. We've been presenting webinars before. We'll be presenting more in the future. But Tony and I work very closely on a daily, sometimes hourly basis, working with customers and just working on future features. So we're very excited to present here. I mention this usually on every call I'm on, but Tony and I purposely put our emails here for a reason. We are very open to customer and business partner contacts. If you have any questions about this webinar or just about an issue you have in general, we welcome contact. We'll probably quickly pivot to a support case, or I might point you to AHA, but we are available. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us for any questions you have, Sametime related. So for the agenda today, what I want to cover is I want to talk about Sametime Meetings, our Sametime Premium offering, which introduces meetings. I want to talk about a new support for our Notes embedded client to pivot and utilize the web or PWA client. And Tony's going to talk about a new non-containerized chat deployment, which we are targeting for this December to be released and available. And then during that discussion, Tony will touch on upgrade migrations. And then because I have an audience, I always like to talk about roadmap. So if we have time, I'll dive into that, and then we'll close out. So, and of course, we'll leave time for questions and answers. As Dan said, please post your questions if you have. We'll address them during the presentations or at the end. So let's talk about Sametime, just our vision of how we see Sametime in the DS portfolio. You know, we are very focused on security, sovereignty, and integrated collaboration for our Domino Plus portfolio, obviously focusing on chat and meetings, but really minimizing your total cost of ownership for on-premise environments and even cloud environments. And so as most of you know, we have our Domino entitlement for our HCL Sametime. This is our chat solution offering that comes with under the CCB license for Domino. You have access to the web client, mobile client, and your Eclipse-based client, which is in your Notes embedded or a standalone. But with Sametime Premium, this is where we're offering our meetings. And if you haven't tested or looked into the meeting solution that we have with Sametime Premium, I do very much encourage it. Again, Tony and I are available to answer questions. We have an entire sales team dedicated to answering questions and promoting the features it has in there. But since version 11.5, we've had this in market. We're making improvements all along the way, adding features. But our number one selling point is security on premise. You own your data, right? So if you're working and you have a cloud service for your meetings and security is a concern and cost, we believe that Sametime Premium with our meetings is something you should consider and really reevaluate and take into consideration. When we look at all the features that are our meeting server provides. I'm not going to go through all of these. These have been presented before, but it's just a reminder of all the core features, meeting ownership, meeting room security. In our 12.0.2, we introduced some more security around data privacy with password protections, privacy settings, so your users know what information is being shared outside of the meeting itself, including the chat that happens inside the meetings, where the recordings go. A lot of good focus on security, and so these are features we prioritize and add into our product. And of course, we have Outlook add-in plugins for calendaring. There's been Domi integration with the Notes and Verse that helps enable quick calendar and scheduling access for Sametime meetings. And of course, it's a big feature that we promote is it's customizable. You could have your meeting page be your own logo, your own branding, and that's very much a feature that we take pride in. So just hitting some more on features, but from an administration side of things. Again, because security is so focused, we're ensuring data privacy, compliance. We have a database utility that allows administrators to make changes within MongoDB, which is our backend database that stores meeting rooms, stores contact lists, admin controls when you're creating meetings, and development or deployment of choice via on-prem or a private cloud. And we have Grafana dashboards that are provided to give you some real-time statistics to review not just meetings, but also chat. And so just in summary, make good security decisions, customize meetings, and lowering your total cost of ownership is really the value we're bringing to customers that are looking to add on to their Domino deployment with chat, and just Sametime as a meeting solution on its own. And so in closing of this this part of the webinar, if you have any questions, you can contact our HCL sales team. We have, you can test it out for free on our sandbox. Also, Sophie is still out there for our Sametime deployments. That has been updated to 12.0.2 FixPack 1, which released in August. So a lot of opportunities out there to test out meetings, reevaluate it, kind of start the discussion again to consider Sametime as an add-on feature with your Domino and Sametime chat CTB license. So moving on to the new, I guess, option feature we're introducing with our Notes clients. This is already in 14.5 early access 1. It is something that we are going to be providing in 14.0 FixPack 3, releasing in December. And before I get into the details, this is not, it's dark launched, right? It's not something that is going to be surfaced to your users for them to just choose without your knowledge. We wanted to make sure that this feature was focused on admins being able to test it themselves before introducing it to their users. And I've presented this before, but now it is in our Sametime Connect client, which was released in August, as I mentioned, and will be coming in Notes. This is what your users will see. They'll see their same embedded contact list, which has the privacy settings. It has the features of that contact list. But when they open up a chat, instead of using that Eclipse-based chat window, it's going to pivot to a web or PWA client. And so this is what they'll see within the preferences when you enable it as an admin. And so this document is out there. It's an article that we published in August talking about how to test it out and how to implement it as an administrator. There are two options that you can surface this UI. One is directly in the plugin customization file where you add a parameter. This is a very good option for new installations, right? You can edit that plugin customization file in your install files. So when customers install, it's enabled by default. As an administrator, you can update this file for testing, and it doesn't affect anybody else but yourself. As you evaluate it and see the use in it, at that point, you're going to look at deploying this to your users. And this is where our managed settings via an update site policy comes into play. Via a Domino desktop policy or a Sametime policy, there's an update site. And in that update site, you direct it to a managed settings file. By specifying the same parameter, when the user logs in, they'll see this UI as an option, this preference as an option in their UI, but it won't be enabled by default. You can control that by not only enabling it in the UI, but setting the values. You want it to be enabled by default, or you want it to be not enabled, and you can lock it. So the user would not have the ability to disable it or enable it, because again, we want to give control to the administrators. And there's another option, which I'll talk about in a minute, is about enabling SSO, providing that LTPA token to the web client so it's a seamless integration and not prompting for re-login when they're moving. Now, with this said, there are some known limitations for this first implementation. At the moment, it only supports a single community. This is the norm, but the embedded client has a multi-community support, which is very beneficial for customers that are connecting to multiple communities. This is not something that we're not looking into, but it's something I need support from, so I'd love to hear from you. Local chat transcripts, because we're not using that Eclipse-based client to log those transcripts, we would not be logging your chats into a local chat transcript. But the important thing I'll get into with the roadmap is we're adding a search field, a search option from our web and PWA clients, so you can search your chat history. There are some chat window transcript preferences that are not relevant, right? When you're using a PWA client for your chat, controlling the color and the font, we're not using that Eclipse-based chat window, so they don't apply. Your custom emoticons would not be there as well. But again, this is a feature we're looking at to introduce into our web client. File transfer preferences, we would still support file transfer, but the preference file has locations to store files and some additional ones that wouldn't apply to a non-Eclipse-based chat window. And then the spell checking within the chat, where now you would use the web spell check options, not the Eclipse-based chat window. So these are not listed in a priority order to us. They're just listed as these are not what is supported in this current release. And in the upper right-hand corner is a QR code to our ideas portal, where I would love to hear your support. Requesting these, voting on these, help us define what exactly is a priority to you and your users as you look into moving them to a web or PWA interface. So with this effort, we know that a lot of customers are going to be coming from a notes embedded environment probably for 10, 20 years, right? So they have an expected look and feel. So we took this opportunity to update our web contact list to be more in line with the embedded contact list, but also to update it to get it more features, a better look and feel. And we've taken the contact list and moved it to a left-hand navigation panel. Again, this is available in our 12.0.2 FixPack 1 build. So they can quickly pivot between the chats they are managing or monitoring to their contact list, where you can start and engage in a contact list directly from there, or engage in a conversation right from your contact list. And this is a familiar experience for someone that's used the Notes and Client, driving conversations through that contact list, and why we felt it was important. We also took this opportunity to better surface or better show the new group chat option, or not new, but how to create a group chat. Before this, it was in a one-on-one, you would create a group. So we've decided to move it here to give it better access if you wanted to start a new group chat, where you can provide an optional message and control the participants. You can also, actually not in that feature, let me go back for a second. You can specify a group, a public group, expand that entire group to show the list of users, and then start removing users that don't apply. So we did more than just surface where the new group chat is. We made improvements into the new group chat window. And so things that we're coming, these are not in the 12.0.2 FixPack 1 release, but we are looking at with that same concept of giving an updated experience that the customers, your users are familiar with. We want to provide some view options, right? Right now, we are defaulting to our more expanded with a business card, and I apologize, there's no photos here, but there is photo. This does do a photo URL retrieval where it's showing the users that are online or off. You could enable an option to only show online contacts, or do a compact view, which gives it, again, that look and feel of an embedded, but updated. So we want to give our users preferences, we want to give them options, and we want to promote adoption of our web and PWA clients. So I do have a video because I know I'm talking about how to do this. I'm just going to push play on this, showing this testing in a Notes 14.5 client. As you can see in the upper right, this is our embedded chat window that you're very familiar with, our Eclipse-based client. If I look at the preferences under the server communities, this empty space here is what they see now, right? What we're going to be doing is looking at how to enable the PWA client. And so I'm referring to the document again. And in here, we talk about the ways to enable it through a plugin customization, specifying the parameter, or rolling it out via an update site from managed settings, and then also a way admins can control and force values to disable or enable. So in this example, I'm going to be using the plugin customization. Again, in a Notes deployment, this is under the Notes Framework RCP directory on a Windows deployment. Opening up that plugin customization file, all I'm doing is simply adding that parameter to the end of the file. I'm saving it. And at this point, I'm going to be looking at starting up the client to read that, right? So I'm logging back into Notes. We'll give it a minute here to start up and load that contact list. But at this moment, we're surfacing the UI, right? It has not been enabled. We're only surfacing the parameter for a user to access the preferences and enable this. So it's still at the moment using the rich chat window, the rich client, the Eclipse-based chat window. But under the server communities now, you see this chat window type where you can select to enable the PWA, and you want to share the SSO, so we're not doing that reprompt every time. And of course, we want to restart the client so it fully accepts this change and doesn't have any mixing of an Eclipse base and a web client. So we're starting back up. Again, we're letting the client load the contact list. And I think in this first example, what I'm doing is I'm going to be initiating a chat, right? This is a first time experience that I'm showing because the PWA has to be installed, but it's very quick, very simple. So it's launching the web client, right? It passed the credentials. We're now using the web client. It's synchronized with the embedded. I've selected to install the PWA and it's literally 1 second. It prompted me to add it to my, to pin it to my taskbar, which I did, and I'm sending messages. So now what I want to do in this next example is I'm going to show you I'm restarting now again, because I want to show you that it's detached from Notes. You are now running a Sametime client that works with the Notes embedded client, but is its own client on its own. So I've shut it down because we're starting the Notes client back up. We're not going to auto launch this every time you start the Notes client. We've decided that you will open up that chat window when you need to, right? When someone sends you a message or when you're starting a message. So in this example, I'm not sending anything. I've just logged into the Notes client. Someone has sent me something. This is prompting because this is the first time we've started the PWA on its own, right? So I said, remember, and I'll never see that prompt again. So this was initiated. This was surfaced to me because someone sent me a chat. Again, it's a separate client for you to manage, but it's tied to the contact list as an option. And so this is the feature. This is the end of the video, but that took me 5-6 minutes to enable it start to finish. If you've tested it already, I'd love feedback. If you want to test it out, I hope this video helped, but we want to keep improving on this, right? If there's something in this that well, I've already talked about the features we're prioritizing, but another concept, I'm just giving you guys ideas that you can help me drive, is encapsulating this PWA into an Eclipse-based window. Now it's tied to the Notes client. I personally like it being detached on its own and working with the contact list, but if there's value in keeping it tied to the Notes client, let me know. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide, which I'm talking about something else coming this December. This slide has been showed at some user groups, highlighting the Domino portfolio, right? With our Verse client, our Notes client, and Nomad clients. Verse integration is there. We are working with them on continuing to improve and update that experience. The Notes integration is there. I've just presented how we're providing an option to pivot to the PWA client. Nomad did not have it, and it's something we said was coming. In the December release of Nomad, they will be providing integration with Sametime. So what you're seeing in the upper right here is a notification that you have some new chats, which would then pivot to our PWA or web client. You have business card support. When you hover over somebody, you can see their awareness. You can start a conversation from a business card, or you can launch the pivot to the Sametime client to continue conversations. So it's same approach with the notes embedded, where we are adding Sametime integration and Nomad and working with our client. Just like with our notes feature that we enabled, this Nomad work is not fully complete. There is room to grow here. There's room to improve. We've always talked about integrating our contact list again into Nomad, into Verse, into any DS product in general. So that's work we are working on in the future with the Nomad and the Verse team. So this is kind of I see a phase one of supporting Sametime integration with Nomad, again, which is coming in December. And I expect them to share information on that in their own release, but because it involves Sametime, I'm promoting it here. So with that, Tony, I'm gonna, not quite yet, I'm gonna speak to a couple slides, but we're gonna be talking about another new thing we're delivering in December, excuse me, is a non-containerized deployment. As we know, we've come a long way in improving our installation. Sametime 9 Premium was very complex with the WAS and DB2 dependencies. In 11.5 and 12, we made that improve. We improved that by having a separate meeting server, a separate proxy server, and a separate community server, but didn't require all the additional servers. In 12, we brought it into a single deployment for chat and meetings. This is a containerized deployment on Docker, Kubernetes, or Podman. We acknowledge and understand that this is not only new for a lot of customers that are familiar with a community server install on Domino, but it also enforced a Linux version operating system. So we want to give our customers options. We want to help support them to move to 12 so you can take advantage of our new features. And with that, we are going to be releasing a Windows-based install. This will be chat only, so it's perfect for our CCB customers that are running 11.5, 11.6 today to install and migrate to be in version 12. And if meetings comes in, if meetings is something we entertain, we'll have a path to that. It won't be added onto this deployment, but at least you're at a version 12 where it's a one-to-one migration when you're introducing meetings. So with that, I'll pivot over to you, Tony, to kind of talk about what has changed, and then possibly give a demo.
Thanks, Trevor. Well, I think that our coordinator will switch me to being able to present. Let me go back one slide, if you would. Right. So as Trevor said, the history of Sametime is varied, and in version 9 we had a very complex deployment. I've been doing support. I'm the L3 lead. If you've deployed a system, you have likely talked to me at some point, especially if you ran into trouble. And I now have control, yay. And what that means is that in version 9, it used to take weeks. For just a chat deployment, it necessarily didn't take weeks. It took a few days by the time you got WebSphere and DB2 and everything ready and the system console and all those different pieces. Would take days. If you had a full audio video deployment, especially if you got into HA and DR and scalability questions, I've been on some that just to get to where you could hit go would take months of planning. And what we did with 11.5 is we simplified that to where it would only take a couple of days. And what we did in 12 when we went to the containerized solutions was we took that down to minutes, right? I can take a brand new Docker deployment, assuming that I have an LDAP server ready for me. I can take a brand new Docker deployment, install Mongo, install Docker, and have a system up and running without any customizations, of course, within about 30 minutes, about the same amount of time it would take to order a, wow, that's a dated reference, order a pizza from Domino's. But we simplified it, and that was the point of it, was to simplify, to make it easier to get it deployed. But again, as Trevor kind of mentioned, several customers are hesitant to go to that new Docker world or to the Kubernetes world, either because of not being ready to support Linux platforms, just not being ready to go to that approach, and really needed a Windows solution. Well, that is what we've done with FixPack 2, which is shipping here within the next month if everything continues according to plan. We have now provided a chat-only solution back on Windows, which means that you'll be able to deploy a very simple chat-only solution on Windows in a matter of, again, I'm going to say minutes. It will take longer to download and get the installer up and running than it will to actually get it going. But it will support it's a single server, single community server, so it's for the smaller deployments. It still scales really well, but it's not meant for the larger, complicated deployments. It's meant for those customers that are running 11.6 today that really need to get to 12 for security fixes and other things that are there, or just the new features. But have been hesitant to get to 12 because of not being ready for the containerization model. It does support the proxy clients, it does support the community servers, the web clients, the mobile clients, it supports everything right up until we talk about meetings. So let me get over here to this screen. And this is a Windows box. It is I think it's a 4-core. I think this one has 16 gigs of RAM on it. The only thing I've done to this machine prior to today's demonstration is that I've already installed Mongo on it. In this case, I think I'm running Mongo 7. But the version of Mongo itself isn't as critical as long as it's current and configured according to our documentation. So it's a very simple install. If you've already got Mongo in your environment because you're running 11.6, you can continue using that. Obviously, we would encourage you to upgrade Mongo to a newer version. Again, security fixes and improvements in the code itself, but our requirements on Mongo are actually fairly small for most cases. And of course, I've clicked the install icon there. This will take it about a minute to start up. So I'll continue talking while it's doing that. The other requirement, of course, is LDAP. That's been required since 12.0. Of course, we've supported LDAP for years, but that is the one thing you'll have to do if you're running 11.6 still using native Domino directory, is you will have to convert to LDAP. The steps to do that, it's part of the migration steps, but the steps to do that are well known. It's running a name change utility on your VP user info or your buddy list storage database and moving that data into Mongo. I'll cover that again, I think, in another slide or two. But moving to 12, especially for those chat-only customers or customers that only need the chat support, but want it on Windows, is now going to be fairly simple. This is actually the longest part of the process. Once you've downloaded your code, the unzip just contains this one particular install.exe file, and then running the installer and actually getting it to load here as I'm stumbling for time is actually probably the longest part of the install. So as it starts up here, we will see that it will ask you what language you want to install in. We do support I thought we supported more than that, but we support various languages. You hit OK, and then it will bring up the Install Anywhere installation. All kinds of things to read. As most admins, we don't really read this. Other people read it and tell us to accept it. But there's your license requirements. You accept the terms. You're going to choose your install folder. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to let it be in its default location, which is in the program files. And then you're going to choose your authentication options. Now, I've got a cheat sheet here, hopefully, where I can get, no, that's not the right one, the host name of this machine, because it's not, the one hint I will give you is that the FQDN of the host, this is actually the Windows machine name. You never want to use that. Just like any of our other Windows installs or any of our installs, you want to provide a fully qualified host name for your machine. This is what the you want to provide the host name that the end users are going to use to access it. So if I wanted to use that local host name, that's kind of okay, but your end users would have to use that in the browser. So we really want a fully qualified host name here. Enabling SSO is all about enabling the cookies and the right domain that they will use so that SSO can work. If you've got a Notes environment that you're coordinating with, you would use it hopefully within the same domain. And then this is just a random string for our JWT tokens. You can leave that as it is. And if you're using SAML, then you would put in your IDP URL. LTPA is really optional in a Sametime environment. You can use this if you're going with Domino, then obviously if you're going to integrate with iNotes, you're going to integrate with connections or Leap or all these other things, you'll have to have something in common to authenticate with. And you can use Sametime to configure that LTPA, and we'll do that here. What this will do is if I have an existing set of keys, I can import them. If I want to generate new LTPA keys and then export those around, I can do that here as well. And then we'll give it a password. And hit next. And it will do that when it does its install. It will do all of that work. Now, in my case, Mongo is on the same machine. So I'm just going to use a local host address. If I had it on a different machine, or if I was using Mongo Atlas, their cloud-based solution, I could use a host name there, or I could provide a connection string. When you're doing Atlas, they often provide you a connection string that you want to use to connect to that environment, and you would simply paste that in here. Because I'm doing local, I'm going to select just to use this local host here, and then it will ask for the username and password I want to use for my admin account. And then it will authenticate that. It will make sure that that connection is going to be successful. If it's not, then you have an opportunity to fix the settings as appropriate. And then we choose our directory type. my particular LDAP, and obviously you can see we have a couple of choices here. The reason we did these choices was, again, to make it easier. Domino directories rarely require base DN settings or anything fancy. Our defaults work 99% of the time with Domino-based LDAP without any changes. Active Directory, oftentimes you need to add the same account name to the filters. This does that for you and kind of pre-populates a couple of the most common things you would have to have for Active Directory. Others, things like Open LDAP or any V3 compliant LDAP server is fully supported and usually tested, but LDAP's a standard, so you're able to just set in what you need. In this case, I'm going against what I call an other, which is it happened to be Open LDAP, and my information again. Everybody has cheat sheets for a reason. One of the things you have to do when you're coming in to do these deployments is be aware of your environment. So knowing your LDAP server's IP or host name, whether or not you want to use TLS, or whether or not you need advanced LDAP configuration. Now, here's a quick note. Another one of the many things we've done to improve our support around TLS for LDAP connections is it's no longer in prior to 1202, you had to create manually a trust store to import any certificates that signed your LDAP server. Plus, there was issues with some of the newer Domino version where we get out of step with cipher models. All that's a thing of the past. The TLS connections we now do with our LDAP servers are fully, it's all been updated to the most recent OpenSSL code, most recent LDAP libraries, and we even ship a default trust store so that the most complex thing you had to do with it should be a thing of the past if you're using standard or well-known signers. I think we support about 120 signers right out of the box without having to create anything manually. So it's very simple. We've greatly simplified that. And then, of course, if you still need that because you have internal signers, then the same methods to be able to create those trust stores still work today. When you're using something other than Domino or Active Directory, you can choose advanced LDAP configuration, and this takes you through the panels that will allow you to set things like if you have a bind ID and password, you don't allow anonymous queries to the LDAP server. Your base objects for searching for users and groups. If you need to change your filters, I'll say 97% of the time, our base filters here will work. Usually what happens is if you have a different attribute you want to authenticate against, or you want to optimize the filters. Most of the time, you can just use these values other than the base object as is. An administrator email address here. We have a built-in admin panel now, so you can do policy management. Gone are the days of having to mess with an XML file, manually adding and moving things. You now have a full admin panel to do that work for you. And let's see here, I used a previous deployment here. There you go. There it is. This user account. And now we'll get our summary of our installation, which you can see the installation is real simple. The summary is where you're going, HCL Sametime, and you're going to hit install. So I've talked mostly, and that of course has slowed me down, but 10 minutes and we're installing a server. It's on Windows. It will take just a moment for this path to get done, and then we'll be able to see it start up. But this is all on Windows, and I don't know what else to say while we wait for this screen to complete.
Yeah, Tony, I'll add something.
Okay.
And I didn't want to interrupt you during the LDAP section there, but it called out Domino directory. And that's obviously very important to us to make sure that we're making integration with Domino very seamless, very easy. In 11.5, 11.6, 11.0, many of our customers may have been using Domino directory directly, meaning not through LDAP. And we might touch on this in our migration, but it's important to know if you're using 11.6 and you have persistent chat, you have a Mongo database deployed. You might be, the directory is what you need to confirm. Are you using Domino directory type or are you using LDAP? Because that reference Domino directory was through its LDAP. So I'm sure there are customers that are using Domino directory, and it's something you have to enable on Domino, start the LDAP task, and then you can take this approach, right? We're accessing the same directory just through LDAP, not through a direct Domino connection. So wanted to provide a reminder of that. It comes up when we're talking about migration of the contact list, because those contact entries are probably going to be in a notes hierarchical format and not an LDAP format. And we have a utility to address that. So just wanted to add that to the discussion. And then Tony, could you comment, and maybe you did and I missed it, if you have an 11.5 or 11.6 environment right now that you're utilizing Mongo, this deployment, are we suggesting a new MongoDB deployment that we migrate data to, or can we use the existing MongoDB deployment that they're using for their 11 environments?
So excellent points. You can continue using the same Mongo environment that you are currently using with your 11.5, 11.6 servers. Obviously, that would be a Mongo 4.4 based on the timing and based on the documentation for those versions, which has gone out of service. So from a Mongo perspective, strictly a Mongo perspective, you should look into updating it. From a Sametime perspective, we've tested against 4.4 with this version, and it works fine. But as with any update, you should look at your entire environment holistically and look into updating it just for a best practice situation. But we'll work against the 4.4 without any issues. And then, as you said, also with the Domino, and since I have a little bit of moments here, it does take a couple of minutes for the install to do its work. Speaking back to the Domino LDAP, right? Moving from Domino, what we would call native directory, where you're hitting names NSF directly for your directory and not using Domino as LDAP. Moving to Domino LDAP is very straightforward. You enable the LDAP task. If you probably wouldn't have any specific requirements at that point, but if you have specific requirements around the LDAP schema or LDAP features, then you would work with the Domino team to get that configuration in place. But from the Sametime side, once you've enabled LDAP on Domino, you would convert your buddy list storage and your Mongo database, the information within it. There's utilities for it in our migration document that would move that from, as you said, Trevor, from the Domino hierarchical format, which is using slashes, to the LDAP format, which is using commas. It's a very straightforward procedure to move that up, and then it's done. So the migration is there you go. So the install is complete. The warnings are just are not an issue here. I've seen this before. I did practice this on this server, so I know it's going to work. But there is an install log if I wanted to find out what they were. And then that's only because I had a previous install file there. So now this server is installed, and if we look at our services panel, we will find that I need to close it and start it back up. And we will find down here a whole bunch of our, if you've done Sametime for a while on Windows, you're going to be very familiar with what you're seeing here. You will see our Sametime based services starting and running, and you'll see now that they're all running. ST Community Launch is the primary service that starts up everything else. And suddenly now we have and I have not put this is a self-signed certificate. So that's why we're getting the certificate warnings. But I now have well, the server is responding. I'm not quite sure what's going. There it is. Just took it a moment. And then I have a chat server up and running. That takes it a minute to get everything coordinated. But I just wanted to show you that I have a server up and running with all my hemmering and hammering and talking along the process in under 20 minutes. It's a very quick, very efficient install. And clearly, I'm not entirely up and running yet. Otherwise, I would have already been logged in. But I hope that you can see. I hope that the demo itself was successful. Since we have about 10 minutes left, I do want to step back over to the slides and talk for a moment about the migration steps. So basically, from pre-12 versions up, well, obviously up to this 1202 FP2, we don't support an in-place upgrade. So you're going from a domino-based system to a system that doesn't require Domino or any of its underpinnings. You're going to need a new machine so that you can get this up and running, validate its deployment, and then switch your users over to it, which is the same migration model as we've been promoting ever since version 10, really, because you couldn't do a version 10 server on top of the V9 servers either. So you get it set up, you move your data over to it, you run a few test users against it, validate everything is working the way you want it to, and then you do a move in DNS to change your host name so that your users don't have to do anything. They'll come, you'd set this up say on Thursday, you get it up and running, you validate it on Friday. On Saturday, you change DNS. On Monday, all your users come in and they're hitting the new server. They get all the new features and they never had to touch their client other than logging out and logging back in. If there's we've talked before a little bit about the migration tool to get your buddy lists and things over to MongoDB. That's well documented in our info center. And then there is, if you're having to convert to LDAP, there is a similar tool to run against any of the stored chat logging data, assuming you had persistence enabled in 11.6, that you could do to make that happen. Speaking of that persistence, that model is required in version 12. And it is the model that we want our customers to use. It's got a lot of value and a lot of features to it. And then I always say to have a backout plan. And with this model, the backout plan is as simple as switching DNS back. That's one of the benefits to having a side-by-side process like this, is that if something goes horribly wrong or you decide you don't like it, you can go back to the old system because it's still up and available. And then once you're satisfied, you do the DNS flip again, and then you get all your new users or all your users onto the new system, and you're up and running. Believe me, I've done this in our own environment. This is the models we follow. Of course, in our environment, we're using a larger Kubernetes environment, which has some other advantages and some other ways of rolling back. But that's a different topic. Today is all about this new Windows chat-only server, which has Well, it gets you up to 12 if you've been hesitant to move to the containerized versions. The whole idea is to remove those barriers.
Yeah, Tony, and I'll
And
just comment real quickly, just not to interrupt, but the in-place upgrade is something that we have supported up through 11, and it is something we support after 12 and beyond. If you're version 12.0, you can in-place upgrade to 12.01, 12.02, and going forward. It's just the 11.x to 12 where the in-place is not an option. So we're trying to do everything we can to support that, make it easier for you. If when you saw Tony showing the services running on this non-containerized windowless deployment, those are the same services that run under a Domino installation. So you can't have both deployments running on the same box because their services collide, right? You'd have duplicate services running under different methods. So that's one of the limitations we had with not being able to support an in-place upgrade. But deploying new, migrating to is what we need to do here, and we've taken steps to make it as painless as possible. But I just want to make the point that once you get to 12, it's back to an in-place upgrade.
right. And
All
I
right.
don't want to turn this into a debugging session. Demos always have a tendency to go, unless you record them like Trevor did. There's a delay on my server for the authentication, so I can't demonstrate that it's working. But I will say, trust me, it works. Um, and it is just as quick as what I've shown here. I probably made a typo somewhere in my copy and pastes,
Yep.
or I'm just not being patient enough. It's only been a couple more minutes.
That's all
So
right.
anyway,
That's all right. We proved that the process of deploying it is not lengthy, right? And obviously we've gone through our testing. And honestly, if customers are interested in testing this out, I mean, December is right around the corner. Please contact us. We don't mind getting information, getting feedback, making changes where we can. So I'm going to run short on time here, and that's okay. I have about 5 minutes left. I've addressed the questions in the chat. There's some new ones that surfaced. And 8.5 to 9, really the same migration steps apply, right? Whether
yeah,
you're at, the new components coming from an 8.5 and a 9 environment is the MongoDB dependency and the introduction of persistent chat. So that would be the thing that we would want to make sure you're aware of, help you with, and again, through support, we're here to help.
right.
And then this, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for those that are still on 8.5 and 9, I'm happy that it's still, it was a solid system. I helped build those systems. I'm very well versed in them. Don't hesitate to move forward. If you got questions, just get a hold of me, either through the email or through a support case. There's absolutely, no reason to be hesitant here. Although I do know the investment that you had in your 9 environments seemed great, and when something works, you don't like to change it, but you really need the new features in 12.
Yep, agreed. And then we'll be posting documentation on obviously how to administrate this, right? From a config file standpoint. Coming from 9.11, you're very used to editing INI files that exist in the Domino directory that community server is running on. There's configuration files under the Tomcat for the proxy. You can modify these files as well. It's slightly different, but we'll document that. And again, we're always here to help. So for roadmap, I want to try and get through this here pretty quickly within our time. If you could go to the next slide here for me, please. A disclaimer, roadmaps are always subject to change based on technical challenges, customer feedback. Next slide. So our roadmap, right? We've released 12, 12.0.1, 12.0.2 with our mountain themes. Petros is planned for June with Domino 14.5. This will be 12.0.3. That we're targeting. If you notice the 2003 to 2005, you might see there's a gap, but I hope what I'm telling you in this call and in what we've been communicating in our fix packs, we are delivering features, we are delivering deployment options. Maybe fix packs is not the best word to call it because we're providing features in updated releases outside of the major milestone ones. So FixPack 1 and FixPack 2 coming have delivered a lot. And then we'll have a new release planned with even more features in 2025. Next slide, Tony. So this is very high level, right? Focusing on seamless and flexible collaboration, easy, secure compliance, and new capabilities. Accessibility is a focus that we are targeting for June. So we are addressing accessibility, taking the opportunity to update our designs to be the latest Enchanted and React. We've shipped or will be shipping the Notes embedded PWA support. Our standalone client supports it right now in FixPack 1. Our Notes client 14.5 EA supports it. 14.0 FixPack 3 will be supporting in December. Notes in December will be supporting, not Notes, Nomad will be supporting Sametime integration in December. Non-containerized is coming in December. BSI certification, we are in the home stretch of that, and very excited to be publishing our BSI certification very soon. Expect some communication from our marketing team on that. And then new capabilities. We're immediately prioritizing and working on read receipts. I mentioned the chat search from the web, the ability to edit, those contact view options. We need to continue focusing on our mobile client, not only from a performance and accessibility standpoint, but giving it some value features. Reactions right now needs some notifications. There is, if you're familiar with the mobile client, there is a remain online. We kind of want to revamp that, change it so it's more of where the mobile client is persistent even beyond that. So more to come on that. With meetings, we're looking to add transcripts into reports. Because we have transcripts, because we have Domino IQ coming, I'm sure people have heard about that. We want to use AI to generate summaries and to-dos based of that in the reports, and just some minor really great features inside the meeting itself to be able to chat with a person. There's some other things I'm not listing here. If you go to the next slide, Tony. I'm showing the QR code again for our idea portal, which is generating these. A lot of votes that have been made over the past many years. Very much appreciate your feedback. Please keep it up. I do get notified. I will be out there updating these features as we push them into actual releases. Next slide, Tony. And this is just a high level idea of all the things that have come out from the idea portal that have surfaced to myself, to our development team, and that we are constantly evaluating. So keep presenting ideas, keep voting ideas. You got my email. Communicate what works for your environment. One of the selling points I feel with our product is that we are feature driven off of customer requests. We're not just throwing a bazillion features at the wall and hoping they stick for you. Tell us what your environment needs to be successful, and then we will do our very best to deliver it. Next slide, Tony. Okay, repeating this, just we have platforms out there that you can test it. Contact sales if you need it. Next slide. I am a minute over, and that's okay. So I have a few more questions that are surfacing. I'll continue to address them. But Tony and I are here for follow-ups and support. I come from support, right? I'm very dialed into support cases. So please communicate us through that. We're happy to help. Dan, how are we doing on time?
Well, we can take another minute or two if you want to try to get to a few of the questions we have not answered up to now.
I'm looking for some new ones I haven't addressed. Maybe I'll review some I have just for everyone's awareness. Obviously, the recording will be posted and shared. The presentation will be shared as well. There was a question about verse integration. I was trying to address this during the Nomad part, but if you look at the Nomad integration, it is very similar to what Verse is today, right? When we are working with Nomad, we are also working with Verse. So they're aware, that team is aware of what we've done with Nomad. And I see going forward, as we continue to work with those teams, the integration, the improvements, like I said, embedding a contact list, embedding the chat so it's not a separate window, right? Managing both your Verse and your Nomad with Sametime in it is something I very much would like, I am pursuing, or we are pursuing. And so updates to Nomad, updates to Verse should be coming in line, but we're working with those teams. There's also a question about can we use the photo inside the Domino directory, like that thumbnail? You absolutely can. And a perfect example to see an example of how to do this is just access Verse right now. You can update your photo image from Verse. That action updates the photo URL in the person document, which is what our clients use, right? So you can do that utilizing Verse to see that URL that it builds, right? And you could ask your users to do that same action, or you can build those URLs yourself. And let's see if there's any other questions. There was a question about connections integration. In Connections 8, they updated the Sametime integration to support the features of version 12 better. There is room for improvement there. I'm helping to push that through. I know in our latest release, CR8, they provided an option to not automatically log into Sametime, make it more of a manual login. There are certain environments where they didn't want that to automatically log them in. So my point is showing that Connections is working on Sametime integration, not just in the past, but moving forward as well. So I would welcome ideas in the Connections portal as well. I'm in there looking at them and would help push those forward. And I think with that, Dan, I've addressed most of the questions here. So we'll probably look at wrapping up.
Okay, well, we want to thank everyone for joining today. We will be sending out a link to the replay, which was one of the questions that was asked earlier. And we look forward to our next webinar, which will be coming in a few months. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.